Hi, folks. It's State Representative Techie Chan of Quincy back with us for another Techie Talk. Hey, Techie, what's going on?
Hey Joe, happy Thursday, the 6th of March. I'm back in my living room.
That's
Actually,
right.
sorry,
Last we
dining
talked,
room.
it was February and it was at the State House.
Yeah, sorry, dining room. So we continue to work in this kind of hybridish world, and you've seen and heard from me from the office, and you've now, seen and heard me from my dining room, although I think you've seen more of my dining room in the last 5 years because of the nature of COVID.
Yes.
Uh, but yeah, no, we
Exhibit one of
got
your tassels there in the background.
Yeah, the graduation tassels of myself, my brother, and my nephew. It seems a little tradition we've had for many decades. But no, yeah, we are working. I mean, it's just the pacing's a little peculiar because committee assignments just was announced last week, waiting for bills to reach committee. And operationally, as we did through the joint rules last week, we're going to change operations at the joint joint committee level on rules, which I'll need to have a conversation with my Senate chair to come to some accord of how we're going to operate the committee. But the House has made a determination to do a dramatic shift to increase accountability of members showing up for committee hearings, as well as more accountability for the committee members to vote and have that information published and provide more information the best we can on public testimony. And that means a lot more manpower issues, which my office needs to adjust on how to do that. And we're going to need more staff because people tend to underrate how much testimony we do get, particularly in email format. And then we also, want to be able to expedite moving bills out. I mean, the rules changes in the House has us moving bills out of committee 60 days from the start of the committee hearing, 90 days on the extension. So committee chairs need to really think about the hearing schedule as not just a hearing a bill, but also hearing and dispensing in a very specific time period. So this changes my entire mentality, how to do things, given the fact I've been working under the original rules, well, not original rules, but I mean the most current set of rules from, so like not current anymore, but you know what I'm saying.
Been a
Since
while since there's been a change. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've only lived under one set of rules, even though 10% of rules has probably changed over the decades, but the vast majority of the basic functionalities hasn't. So the Senate also has a similar situation. And this organizational part between House and Senate chairs is a lot more negotiating than I think people realize, and try to reach an accord of operations that satisfies not necessarily the operations of the committee, but also satisfies the directives of the Senate President and the House Speaker. So it's going to be involved, but I'm on a tight time for me because assignments are out and I got to get moving on a schedule and something that actually makes sense with me and the staff and also the senator's staff. So
Yeah.
a lot of my mind and trying to mentally do the logistics of this. And I got 250 some odd bills on average. And as I've talked about before, this committee is a hodgepodge of everything and everything that you can think of. So there needs to be a very well thought out logic before I even start.
So assuming you kept your committee assignment.
Yeah, I'm back at the Joint Committee of Consumer Protection and Professional Licensure. It is my 5th term of appointment, so I'm very thankful for the Speaker and the Democratic Caucus for voting. We actually do vote for committee assignments to allow me back to this committee. I'm probably one of the longest serving people on this committee since I'm starting term 5 here. But I like to remind folks, and I'm now reminding people around the building, I've been around a long time in terms of combination of staffing and interning and now elected. And, I've been working essentially on the same policy subject matters for a better part of 30 years now. So, I mean, raw institutional knowledge of why a bill is there, how it got to this point, why is it here, who did it, what was involved, what was the event that created it. I mean, not to say I remember every detail, but the odds are pretty good. I can recall the genesis of why a certain bill was created.
Right, right. Of course, as you're well aware, the kind of your federal counterpart is being decimated in Washington. Do you think your committee can pick up the slack here in Massachusetts?
Well, I mean, National Consumer Protection Week is no longer National Consumer Protection Week. Let's ignore some of the social things that Trump is doing. He's not just Elon Musk really, but I mean, it's not necessarily just this social statements they're making, which offends a lot of folks on both sides of the spectrum. So let's not pretend that it's a monolith mentality about social issues. But the functionality issues is the real question now, right? And that's the part that's the bread and butter of like constituent services and your work, your day-to-day life. I mean, if you have Social Security and you hear 7,000 people and closing 4 regional offices for Social Security, and you don't have like an automation or a plan in place of how to deal with these cuts, you should be very concerned. I mean, when they fired all the nuclear engineer safety people and they can't replace any of them, and this is not necessarily just nuclear power plants, but also, the stockpiles of waste, monitoring uranium. A lot of universities use uranium in small nukes. People don't realize how many research facilities on a national level do that. We have a safety research for that stuff. And, even down at, CDC, they basically terminate every triage doctors. So, for example, we're in the middle of a measles outbreak in Texas. There's been a report in Florida. And big surprises from non-vaccination. It creates a spread situation. And I hear that if you're a certain age, you should consider a booster soon. So definitely talk to your doctor's office, especially if you're over 60, about whether a booster is necessary. But that being said, the lack of CDC triage means that local health boards are left to their own, trying to figure out what to do. And local boards of public health, as well as state boards of public health and county ones, are going to have to do the we call it the concentric circle.
Right. You kind of circle the wagons, right?
Also find patient zero.
Yes, right. Yeah. Contact tracing, I think, was the term back in the pandemic days.
Yeah, and CDC is remarkably good at that with the triage units. So with doctors, nurses, and other medical professionals are sent out to do triage and research, well, that's gone. And if you're like a small community in the Midwest, the federal government assistance is enormous. And we live in Massachusetts. DPH does have that capacity. We've proven that in the past.
Oh, yeah. Even like larger cities like Quincy, health departments. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you're a small community in like the Midwest where, your population of like 30,000 people over like 50 square miles, yeah, you're not going to have the capacity. I mean, this is where it's going to start to hurt faster and more apparent than, wealthy states with large urban infrastructure. And I think that's when people are going to start realizing. So there's a measles outbreak someplace in, rural Indiana, for example, just picking a random rural area. You could have depending on the vaccination rate, you could have a massive amount of serious injury and death because there's no way that local government can do contact tracing properly.
Right. Yeah, and it can go undetected until it gets hard to control.
Absolutely, and the new Secretary of Health and Human RFK has already put out a release saying everyone should get the measles vaccine. The problem is that there's so much static on all the news from the president, the global affairs. We talked about this before regarding clickbait on the news media. That one message from RFK has not really resonated as much as it should have.
Mm-hmm.
Because I saw a news report that on the Hill that he's putting out the word, get vaccinated for measles, and that's lost.
Yeah, which is unfortunate to say the least, dangerous to say the most.
Yeah, during it's not an epidemic by any stretch, but you want to prevent one. Generally, the news media will shift the Health and Human Secretary and the president to make a statement. The president really hasn't. We talked about it, the media hasn't picked it up, and they just basically just ignore the Health and Human Secretary and a very important message, particularly an individual who's considered a vaccine skeptic, telling people to get a vaccine.
Right. Yeah. It's dealing with, I guess something that we're familiar with, at least measles. But what if there's, God forbid, another pandemic? That was something we're not familiar with.
Well, yeah. And then, we already have a dismantled CDC. There's no more emergency triage. We're not part of WHO, which the World Health Organization, which this is crazy conspiracy that makes no sense. People tend to forget the United States runs the world. It is not a brag. I mean, things in the UN are completely dependent on the US dictating terms because we pay the most money. It's New York, and we have the most scientific capacity on the planet. So things like, the World Health Organization is not necessarily just addressing health issues on a global level, but it's also information sharing. and cutting us off from information sharing. Again, you said about the pandemic. Unlike the flu of 1918, communication is very different now from then, and scientific advancement. So if we had the same situation during COVID in 1918, you probably would have the same result in terms of like 40, 50, estimated people dying. They know at least 20, 25, but considerably larger. But I mean, information in research technology didn't move like it does today, and cutting us off on sharing information, especially at the government level, where you have centralized collection for scientists, it can be devastating.
Yeah. So any moves at the state level to kind of fill in the gap?
Well, we can't. I mean, realistically speaking, there is a point where there's no way we can fill the gaps. I mean, we're already still backfilling programs like school lunches and school breakfasts in public schools. I mean, some of the pandemic era things, on public health stuff. I mean, not a lot of it, but I mean, we've been backfilling some of those things. But I mean, we're facing a general economic slowdown on the whole, even though unemployment is still at 4% and below. Inflation has no sign of slowing down. Wage growth is continuing, but is behind the rate of inflation, which means you're making money but losing money at the same time. As strange as that statement is made. And
No, I understand, because your dollar is worth less the more the higher inflation goes.
Yeah, and even though all capital gains in our state goes to the rainy day fund, if the housing market is still suffering from a close to 7% interest rate, which is funny because that's the same interest rate when I left college 30 odd years ago.
Yeah.
But also, the market is in complete disaster. So the stock market's like complete mess. So, those cap gains that the state collects that goes to the rainy day fund, thankfully, it's not part of baseline budget, but I mean, it can hurt our cash reserves. If you're a state that is heavily dependent on capital gains, particularly in places like California, they're going to have a huge budget crisis.
Yeah, the stock market is just doing wild, unpredictable swings. It doesn't really know where to go, it seems like.
Yeah, not to say I'm a stock market expert. I mean, I do monitor these things, particularly on the consumer and nature of my chairmanship, and monitoring certain industries that are relative to us as consumers. And again, I always recommend over and over again, talk to a financial planner. If you do not have a financial planner, it doesn't hurt to talk to one and, find one that works for you, right? That makes sense for you in terms of your long-term financial goals as well as your retirement. I strongly do advise it, particularly in the era where, very confusing on interest rates where your local bank's giving you 0.1, but you can get a bond for 4%, go online for 4% on an online bank, but you probably have a pension program if you're government, or you may have a 401k, 403b, 457, or you have a different Roth IRA or another kind of IRA, and you're exposed to the stock market for long-term retirement purposes. Yeah, you should care, because most of the country is in the market in some form or another now, and
Right.
It's unrealized gains yet because you're not retiring, but you'd rather see it grow than shrink. So the market is completely confused. You have a lot of day trading, when buy low, sell high. So that's why the morning's like a disaster, but the evening it seems like there's a sell-off. So there's like a recovery mid-afternoon. There's a massive sell-off. And because of things like Robinhood, I mean, it's a constant growing personal people just doing stock market in their own. There's more individuals and not wealthy people just doing it on their own, and people under 40 in particular are heavy participants in the market as retail investors, not hedge funds, not mutual fund managers, not your financial planner doing transactions on your behalf, like people just doing it on their own, and it causes market shift. Unfortunately, there's also a huge market loss for these folks too, because it's very high risk. And so I don't encourage day trading nor timing the market. Your losses could destroy you. So there's a lot of variables going on. The U.S. dollar's weakened a ton from 109 to 103, I think. It's 103.5 today, this morning. And then you have bond yields unable to decide because that's a safe haven. So the U.S. dollar is a safe haven, and bonds are, and they're like fluctuating everywhere too. And the price of oil, the WTI, is under $70 and just around a lower level because OPEC's announced they want to stick it to us apparently. just gonna create a whole lot more market flooding, and cause the price of oil to continue to go down. Normally, they try to close the spigot to try to drive up the price. They've been trying to do that for 3 years at OPEC, and not all the countries are participating, especially Russia. So, the U.S. is the biggest single fossil fuel generator on the planet. We generate the most natural gas, oil, and we're the biggest exporter. But the funny thing is that tariff wars and other countries looking to try to generate revenue by volume over revenue by price through constraint of supply, is gonna just hurt local fossil fuel generators.
Back to financial planners for a sec, Tacky. Are financial planners regulated by the state at all? Or do they have to adhere to certain standards?
Well, there's a kind of a funky thing at the SEC. They actually outsourced the financial planners to a thing called FINRA, which don't ask me what it stands for right now. I've actually met these folks. It's kind of fascinating, and they're actually charged by the federal government to license, set ethical standards, and enforce, in addition to SEC, on misbehavior by financial planners.
Mm-hmm.
Most people also don't realize the Secretary of State's office he has a securities division, which investigates what it sounds like equivalent of our SEC, but at the state level. So the Secretary of State actually is a super powerful division that people don't realize. And they do investigate financial fraud. So there are I won't say great safeguards, but there are safeguards in place regarding licensing and oversight. But as the federal government starts to peel back the workforce and their responsibilities, it's going to be more important that FINRA, this not-for-profit entity that's an arm of the federal government, has to pick up the pace. Unless they cut the funding to FINRA, then you don't have an entity to license people because they won't have anybody work.
Right.
And they won't have anybody to take your license away.
Right.
You don't have your license, you can't do your job. And I think there's a second license too, because there's I have a friend who does this, and there's a whole federal security thing, and he has he's fingerprinted and all this stuff. It's a real thing. There's a second, somebody out there must know the answer, is going to email you. Mm-hmm. I think it's a second license out there too. It's pretty engaged.
Okay.
And they have to carry insurance, and whether it be Fidelity, Schwab, or Ameriprise, or or someone at a bank, or somebody at local level, they're subject to higher level regulation. So, yeah, but again, I always tell people you want to find someone that you can relate with. I'm an attorney, but if you're uncomfortable being represented, then you probably should find somebody else.
Yes, that's good advice for anything, but certainly when you're dealing with your investments, yeah.
Yeah, same thing with investments. My approach to investing is that you're uncomfortable with your financial advisor, then you should go somewhere else. Same thing as getting a lawyer or a doctor or a dentist or a car mechanic or a haircut. Like everything else in your life that, particularly scissors come into your head. You should have someone you're comfortable with, and that you feel can relate to you and is empathetic towards your concerns, particularly your money. And that that you feel comfortable and trust, and you can review the business. Their Better Business Bureau, where there have been violations against them. The internet is a wonderful thing. You can do a search and find anything and anyone.
Yep.
So, but like I said, many times I've come on to people that don't try to guess your way through this. You should talk to somebody to help you provide a plan.
Yeah. Yeah. Seeing as we're on the topic of finances, I know that you were in here with your colleagues not too long ago to talk about the senior circuit breaker tax credit in Massachusetts.
Absolutely. So you can go see the show by Speaker Mariano with myself, Bruce Ayers, and Brian Lynch from Department of Revenue talk about the senior circuit breaker. And I'm going to reemphasize what we talked about on that show. Definitely take advantage of it if you're turned 65 or older last year in 2024. You have a potential of getting $2,730 back in the credit. There are income guidelines. If you're single, it's $72,000. If you're head of household, it's $91,000. If you're married jointly, it's $109,000. If you're married, filed separately, you do not qualify. And your principal residence has to be 1.172 million or lower, so 1,172,000 lower, that number lower to qualify for tax credit. And you can get your calculation of credits based on the property taxes you paid and 50% of your water and sewer bill, or your rent, which is up to 25% of the annual amount of your rent, provided you don't live in subsidized rent situation, meaning government run or you get a voucher, things like that. But the 27 to 30 is your maximum amount, and that's a lot. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to know what the average real estate tax is, because I don't know what it is in Massachusetts. I'm sorry, in Quincy off the top of my head. But I mean, I do my mom's taxes, and she's going to save somewhere between 35 and 40% on a basic rebate against her property taxes.
Yeah, that's huge. I'd say the average tax bill is around $7,500 in Quincy, probably.
Yeah, so if you get the full benefit of 2730, that's going to clear 35%.
It's pretty significant for sure. Money that can be put to good use, I'm sure.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised how many people don't take advantage of it. That's why we try to get this message out through QATV, in particular, every year for people to take advantage of senior circuit breaker. And if you are well over 65 and you haven't done it in the past 3 years, you can file your taxes to back taxes, essentially, to apply for a credit. And we also like to remind folks, just because you don't pay taxes doesn't mean that you can't qualify. Mm-hmm. This is credit, not a deduction. This is credit equals cash. That's how you remember it.
Yeah, you get a check, right?
You get a check or direct deposit. So you should fill out your taxes, which is a Form 1 in Massachusetts, and you bring out the circuit breaker worksheet, which is the Schedule CB. Do the worksheet or have someone help you out. And, whatever you get there, you put on your taxes, even pay zero taxes. Now you're in IOU territory from the government, and you're going to get your check, but you must fill out your tax form. So my mom, for example, she has no one to speak of. I mean, she has a Social Security and she has very minor pension. My father passed away a long time ago, so we have it was a good insurance policy 40 years ago, but not today.
Right.
The numbers are minuscule for today's calculations. She's going to get the full benefit because she's well below the income guideline. The home is below the value. And we are in the same zone-ish of the average property tax in Quincy. And, I got through her taxes, she's getting about 35% back. So, but you'd be surprised how many people do not take advantage of it. Even my own mother, had a reminder to do it a long time ago. But when she turned 60, like 8 or 9, and I told her that you should call your accountant when she still had used an accountant back then and filed those back taxes, and the accountant did for her. And she back then it was much smaller than 2,700, it was closer to like 700, 800. That makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Our accountants, tax preparers, are they familiar with the circuit breaker?
They should be, but it doesn't hurt to remind them.
Yep, absolutely. It's a good point. Have the income requirements changed for 2024?
Yeah, it's a 7,200 or 72,000 for single, 91,000 for head of household, and 109,000 married jointly. Both the circuit breaker and the income guidelines and the assessed value of property is adjusted annually based on CPI.
Oh, okay.
So as time moves along, the tax credit value will go up as well as the guidelines. So, for example, in 2021, the income guideline was $62,000.
Okay.
So, in the course of essentially four years, for a single person, it's went from 60,000 to 72,000.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right, and the assessed value, same thing. In 2021, the assessed value cap was 884,000. Today, it's 1.172 million. So again, it's a reflection of real life adjustments.
Yes.
Which will follow real life situations as best it can based on the macro data on CPI.
Yeah. No, very good. Yeah, it's a great program. There's no reason not to apply if you qualify.
Oh, absolutely. You must. You should do it. And like I said, it's a work form. You may not get the maximum credit, but I mean, you're going to get something. And
right.
Cash is king. So, I don't know why we ever leave money at the table.
Right, right. Did the speaker or did any of did Brian maybe have a total for how much has been refunded, say the year before?
Speaker has that number. I didn't have that.
Okay.
No one
All
gave
right,
me.
just curious.
In Quincy, it's well past $1 million.
Is it really? Yeah.
In Quincy, it's well past $1 million. And given, I'm sorry to tell you folks, this is not a young city. So we think there's a substantial amount of this population that is still not taking advantage of this.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. So hopefully our little message here helps, QATV and wherever else we can get it out there.
Yeah, and if you don't like doing things electronically, obviously you can call my office. We'll mail you paper, or Bruce's office, or Speaker's office, or John's office. All of us are happy to put paper in the mail to you. We also like to do yet another fraud alert. I keep doing this now. It seems like every call that it's tax season and the scams are hot and heavy. You have the I owe you money on Easy Pass and the Mass Pike. That text is coming around. I've seen it 3 times. They do auto call or target call senior citizens, particularly, to scare them into giving money over the phone, which you should not do, or hand money at the door, or send money in the form of a money order regarding payment taxes. And you guys shouldn't be surprised about this either. The immigration scam is now hot and heavy too. Not you are a U.S. citizen or not. They're going to call you and threaten you deportation if you don't pay money. And they're going to claim them from ICE, and it causes a lot of fear, or it spreads false information on social media that this is what's going on, which then perpetuates the scam. So, if the government only reaches out to you in letter format, if you're not sure about the letter, again, reach out to any of us regarding that. And we also strongly encourage people to report it to the Quincy Police and file a log on that. And, you also can check if it still exists, the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, who are very concerned about these same scans as well, because they do monitor them and they do publish that. And you got a number of websites like, I don't know if Snoops is still .com is still around, but there's also a number of websites that actually investigate these fraud things to get better information out there. There's a lot of independent research on the internet that look at scams, try to figure out how it works, and then inform you what happens. And foreign governments, are cracking out scammers locally in their own countries.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of these scammers not necessarily are inside the United States, despite what phone numbers may come up on your cell phone.
Right.
But it does affect other nations, and other nations, have task force just cracking down on scammers.
Yes, yeah. I know several years ago there was a big fraud with the unemployment. Has that been abated, do you know?
No, it hasn't. The DUA, Department of Unemployment Assistance, which by the way is a federally paid for agency, which we may not have anymore. They during COVID, this scam came up during COVID where people were stealing identities and collecting unemployment. That has not stopped. I get about one a month now
Still, really, yeah.
Whose identity has been stolen, and they apply for unemployment for the first time, and they've been informed they already received benefits. So they're outside the window of a second opportunity to receive benefits. There are some time constraints, and as a result, DUA had to go through as a whole identity check issue, which takes time to do.
Yeah,
identity verification. It's not like you see a driver's license and you're done. It's a little more involved with that when it comes to fraud. So it does delay people's unemployment, and this is something that really was really hot and heavy during COVID. And I got friends who got letters when they owe taxes on unemployment they never received.
Ah, wow. Okay, that's scary. Yeah,
it is scary. So there's another one. Identity theft is real, and I've come to the conclusion a lot of my information, particularly as a public official, is already floating on the internet. So it was surrendered a little bit to that. But you got the 3 credit reporting companies, Experian, Equifax, and
TransUnion.
TransUnion. You can get a free credit report. The state and federal government gives you a free credit report. You can do a credit freeze. It's getting easier and easier to do that. It was kind of onerous initially 20 years ago, but then try to make it simpler. You can pay for credit monitoring. And under state and federal law, that if there's been a data breach, I wrote this law, they have to give you a free credit monitoring for at least 1 year if there's been a data breach. The federal government also requires that as well as the state of California. Mm-hmm. So I mean, you got this like between more than one state, and the federal government, and things I worked on that people forgot I worked on. You have more opportunities to try to get more information what your credit is and get more alerts. And credit card companies are doing now too. You can
Yes.
monitor your credit as well. And if you see an error in your credit report, you call the credit reporting company and tell them there's an error here.
Yep, I know a lot of homeowners insurance policies now offer that as well. Car club membership, can offer that as well. So it's out there.
Yeah, the drawback of a credit fee is you got to remember to unfreeze the credit before you make a purchase. It requires. So when you go buy a car, you buy a home, you got to remember to unfreeze it so they can check your credit score.
Right, right. Or even to open up a new credit card, you have to do that. Yeah.
And I also remind folks, this is a mission impossible. Data breaches are not done by someone coming in with a USB stick and sticking in the computer. It actually happens at your computer that we're talking now, where you open the wrong link.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly a worm gets into your computer, and then you start going to your own online bank accounts, and it start to worm its way in, trying to not necessarily steal your money, but attack the bank system directly through your computer. Same. Right. That's that same thing that's what happened to Equifax. It was not done by someone snuck in and stole the data. It was a client, one of their clients had a worm, had a virus, and they clicked on it, got infiltrated into their web browser, then proceeded, was waiting. It was designed for one day, was waiting to try to get a reporting company.
Yeah. Yeah, it happened here in the city. Got infiltrated through a dormant email account.
Yeah, the city pension fund.
Yeah.
I think that $2 million was absconded with, and there was no double verification. I think some people feel they're annoyed by the fact that you log in, and before you can finish logging in, you have to get a call, a text message from your cell phone, or you get an email to one of your personal accounts to confirm identity before logging in. City didn't have that actually system for the city pension fund, which is kind of scary.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, most of us, feel that it's kind of annoying to have to do that on our phones and our emails as one extra step. But I strongly encourage it. You definitely should take advantage of the two-step system. That includes apps like even my Harvard Vanguard Atrius Healthcare. Before I can access my own medical records, I have to do a double verification.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it's a great safeguard for sure. Actually, it should be a law, I think, personally. I don't know if you can mandate that, but
we probably could. Some entities, particularly smaller businesses, won't be able to do that. So if you have like an account on a small shop, I suppose we could carve that out for smaller businesses. But ultimately, the big concern is anything that has financial institutions are the most biggest concerns. Banks, anywhere that has your credit card, anybody can get to your credit reports. Those are the biggest priorities. They can do the most damage in the shortest period of time.
Right, right, yeah. So yeah, the credit freeze is a great safeguard for sure.
Yeah, and if I know everyone loves their points and cash backs on their credit cards, but also remember this credit card fraud monitoring on your credit cards. If you see a problematic transaction, definitely call them up and file a dispute. And if it's fraud, the credit card companies eat the cost. So banks and credit companies absorb hundreds of millions of dollars in credit card fraud. I'm not sure what the number is on an individual level, but everyone hates banks and credit card companies. Don't get it wrong, but you should be aware they eat a lot of fraud. The consumer does not pay for that. It's a fraud. They eat that cost, and the retailers are kept whole.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. So, yeah, it's there's a lot to it for sure.
Yeah, it ain't cheap to eat fraud.
Right. Yeah. Translates into higher interest rates eventually if it keeps going. So yeah.
And fees. Yeah.
And fees. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I mean, also we're on this. Attorney General has issued orders regarding junk fees, better disclosure, knowledge of what the all price in is before you check out. This is similar to the Biden junk fee rules that the FTC put out before Biden left. Again, we'll see if those junk fee rules stick around. But the Attorney General has issued similar rules that all businesses, when you buy something, you get full itemized disclosure what's going on.
Yeah, there's so many subscription services now that it's very easy to get sucked in and forget about them.
Yeah, we're a notification for the AG is doing notification of how to opt out. Your date, I mean, your email account address is constantly being sold into. That's why you get so much junk. And this is on the federal level controls opt in, opt out. So it's a little bit of a conflict issue on federal power, state power. But the
Hmm,
truth of it is that we're like the only country left that is automatic opt out. I'm sorry, automatic opt in. You must take affirmative action opt out.
I see.
The EU is all opt in. You must choose to opt in. Actually, pretty much almost everybody but us is you have to choose to opt in. So countries that have a presence in Europe, I'm sorry, companies that have presence in Europe, their websites you notice have notification of cookies and whether they can accept and deny cookies, and those that require opt in. Those are countries operate outside the U.S.
Oh, very interesting. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, they tend to be multinationals.
Okay. So the difference between a capitalistic economy, right?
Well, again, it's with different kind of regulated capitalist economies, right? People are aware that I'm pro-consumer, but I'm not anti-business. But we know a good economy is a regulated capitalist economy. But the question is how you regulate properly to protect the consumer, because protected consumers will spend money, which moves the economy. It's not complicated.
Yeah, if
So
you feel safe, yeah, exactly, right.
you safe spending your money, you're going to spend your money. Ain't hard. The EU is a little bit overregulated, and it's hard to do business. It slows things down. But at the same time, though, in certain areas such as online transactions, they're actually a bit ahead of us.
Hmm.
So, I know that people tend to like beat up on the EU, like, oh, you can't do business and they're anti-business. So yeah, I'm not going to argue in some areas, yes. But in other areas regarding, consumer safety and consumer choice, the EU is a little bit ahead of us too, regarding especially areas of technology where they want to ensure that consumers have maximum opportunity to choose technology in a competitive field. Where in the US, it's not quite the same regarding antitrust. And now we have an administration that may not do antitrust, except for perhaps pharma. Everybody hates pharma, but I mean, other industries may be left to touch this time. So I mean, it's a balancing act. You do too much, it discourages business, which only hurts you and I. You do too little, they're going to rip us off, which only hurts you and me. So I mean, just saying.
Yeah, it's a moving target for sure. It doesn't never stays the same. Yeah,
Yeah, as a guy that's done regulatory policy for his whole adult life, it is a very delicate balancing act.
sure. Well, there was no online retail way back, not that long ago, really.
Yeah, you had mail order.
That's it. Right.
Remember you watch TV, cash and delivery.
Yes,
People don't know what COD is anymore.
that's right.
Yeah, you order online, and I'm still old enough to remember what a catalog looks like. You get those mailed to your home, and you go through the catalog and make the phone call.
Oh yeah, I mean, you could order a house through the Sears catalog years ago.
Yeah, yeah, and there was a lot of them. I mean, before you had a great access to buying technology, you had to find a specialist and you get a catalog, and then you call them up and you read the number. You do that. I remember one of my first jobs in college was working in technology in the IT department, and I had to make an order, so I had to call for quotes. There was no online quotes. You had to start calling around to get a catalog and just start calling around to get quotes to find the best price, and then you do the specs and try to determine what kind of systems you needed in the company, and then you put the order in.
Yeah.
And they fax you the quotes. They fax you.
Faxing, yes. I think a few companies still use the fax.
Yeah, you had to wait like a couple of days depending on the business.
I'm sure you're aware, Jackie, there was a report earlier this week about the lack of primary care physicians in Massachusetts and approaching crisis level.
Well,
And
yeah,
a
this
move to maybe have nurse practitioners at least be available for office visits.
well, it's a national problem too, right?
Yeah,
It's not just local. We're still taking fall from COVID. There's massive burnout. People are not waiting to maximum retirement age. I've said that more than once, particularly if you're doing all right. And we just can't get people want to get into this field in the competitive marketplace where you're assuming a whole lot of debt associated with getting a higher degree, particularly in medicine, lawyers, engineers. And I have a cousin who is a graduate of UConn Medical School, and they're not looking to work in hospitals. They want more 9 to 5 gigs. They want more steady hours. They don't want to be doing constant triage. And that's also part of it as a quality of life issue of particularly new young doctors. And the
Mm.
hospitals need to adjust to this idea, but they just haven't got around their heads how to deal with it. And also, again, the debt. You have to pay.
Yeah.
You can't pay them enough. They can't cover their medical debt. So,
Yeah. And do you think nurse practitioners could fill some of the gaps of primary care physicians?
well, they do already. I mean, Atris
Yeah.
Health, I see my nurse practitioner more than I see my doctor. And
Yeah.
I love my doctor. He's just retired. So I'm in that age group now that has that happening. But I mean, I need to see my new doctor at some point to get to know the individual. But yeah, no, I've pretty much got a nurse practitioner at Atris Healthcare, and the roles have been largely expanded over the years.
Mhm.
But I mean, you see them at urgent care centers, and you see them at triage and emergency rooms. But there's a shortage of nurses too in Massachusetts as
Yes.
well for a similar reason. It's again combination of burnout. People, don't want to take on a whole lot of educational debt to get into the profession where the money doesn't pay as well. And people don't want to pay higher costs, but cost of labor is a part of paying higher costs.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, we've been pushing, DPH. We passed some laws regarding allowing reciprocal licensing for foreign trained doctors, but that's not as simple as it sounds because not every country has the same licensing nor education requirements, and all 50 states have different licensing education requirements for medical doctors too. It's a non-uniform standard. And there's been push for interstate compacts as well, but problem interstate compacts is whose state is controlling the licensing and regulation. I'm always very hesitant about compacts because are we now driving everybody to the lowest standard, which then puts patient care at risk.
Right. Yeah. It's not, there's no one solution. I don't think. Yeah. It's a combination of things.
Yeah, I mean, this is a conversation legislature all the time trying to expand scope of practice to different folks, but did it actually meet the educational standards for that scope of practice? So some of you remember I did pass a bill last year to allow foreign trained dentists that meet the education requirements and pass the exam for dental hygienists to be dental hygienists to give a pathway of work for foreign trained dentists that do not or unable to or have not been able yet to get their reciprocal dentist license, right? Now, when you do things like interstate compacts, they're no longer taking a Massachusetts test.
Ah, I see. Okay. So that's a problem. Yep.
Yeah, it's a lot. People try to oversimplify a very complex issue. And, if you use their standard of care and protection in Massachusetts, do you trust our standard of care protection? Or do you trust like some other state, which I would not try to instill in another state, but do you trust that other state one because it's not uniform?
Right. And you don't know what it is.
Yeah, because that person will come in, but may not have to meet the same educational training levels or hours worked they do in Massachusetts. And, it's a totally different system here. But, what may be acceptable in one state may not be acceptable to us. And
Mhm.
that's a internal debate in the legislature trying to sort out among ourselves. But, our interest, of course, is the interest of protecting the public. People are like, oh, you're doing protectionism for your own industry. I'm like, not necessarily. I mean, the public here is used to a certain quality of educational standard by the medical professionals. I mean,
Oh, yes.
you want us to lower those standards?
I'm sure everybody would say no. Plus, it's a major economic driver.
That is it. But then we have a workforce shortage too. So how do we attract out-of-state folks to reciprocate in where standards are higher than the standard they're from?
And how will this new, immigration policy in the federal level impact the healthcare industry in Massachusetts?
Well, you may be surprised to hear that a lot of temporary workers do work in healthcare,
Mhm.
and not all doctors and nurses, but also support staff.
Mhm.
I think when we talk about healthcare, people tend to think about the medical personnel, but I'm expecting to go to South Shore Hospital on Monday morning to hear about workforce shortages all through the system, ranging from people that clean the rooms, change the bed sheeting, all the way to accountants. I mean, the back room is decimated, and frankly, McDonald's pays more than most hospitals for the low end labor. So same thing happening in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. They make more money right now driving an Uber, delivering food, working in hospitality, which is decimated as well in terms of workforce. than they are working in the medical profession. And it's very challenging for those professions to try to pay doctors more and also pay what I consider also very crucial people to make a hospital run, the rest of the skeleton. And that is a higher cost, and the margins are thin.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's been talk, I know, and the governor is very concerned about the Medicare, Medicaid, and how the federal government might impact that.
Yeah, I think I touched on this before. I mean, that in the House of Representatives, a segment of Republican Congress that's looking to just burn Medicare a little bit in terms of the benefits. And Medicare is the biggest economic driver of our budgets in terms of cost of our budgets. It's over $2 trillion of $6.57 trillion federal budget. It's over $2 trillion, I believe. At our budget, I keep repeating, it's somewhere between 27 and 33%, depending on the size of the budget that year. So, it's the single biggest line item. In the state's case, the federal government does 50% reimbursement. So the feds decide to take that reimbursement. There's no way we're going to fill that hole, period. I mean, we can't fill 50% of the budget if the feds pull out. So that means you cut benefits. And, the last time we did a major benefit cut at our level was being 03 and 08 during those recessions where you cut off things like dental care in particular, which, again, one of those battles I'm fighting about providing expanded dental care back because that's actually not covered by the feds. So all state governments can have a larger Medicare, through their various Mass Health or Cal Health or New York Health or whatever health systems they have and whatever they call it. Beyond the scope of the feds. But if the feds start really putting back in Medicare, I can see states also pulling back on these add-ons they put over the years that frankly make us healthier and people do like.
Yeah, well, in Massachusetts, it's what the latest budget, I think, is $59 billion or something like that.
Yeah, but Ways and Means hearings in the budget actually starts today, I believe. So there'll be multiple of those around the state. But yeah, I mean, it's the consensus revenues in for now until we actually get our tax numbers in April, because we don't know until the end of April what tax numbers are. And but yeah, it's still got to be expectation 30% of the budget. And if you look at the age pie chart or whatever, the pyramid, not surprising, people live longer, and that side of the pyramid is going into Medicaid, Medicare.
There you go. So any cuts would be very impactful for sure.
Yeah, and you pay for this. It's in your FICA, whatever that your Social Security plus Medicare portion of your paycheck. It's actually separate from your taxes. That section of the paycheck, pays your share of Social Security and your share of Medicare. Now, I'm a state employee. We don't get Social Security because we don't pay. And as taxpayers, you do not match anything. I mean, we have a liability for the state pension, but that's caused by past legislators making really bad decisions regarding the pension because they took money from the pension fund as opposed to raising taxes at one point in the 50s and 60s. So, bad fiscal policy from before I was born is still contributing to today's pension fund.
Wow.
Problems. And also people live longer, which also creates a liability.
Yes.
Security is the one that has actually a bigger problem than the state. So you as a taxpayer do not pay Social Security for government employees. There's some rare exceptions for like town administrators and things like that on a municipal level. So you don't pay the 6.5%. And I don't pay the 6.5% of Social Security. So I'm not a contributor to that, which doesn't really help Social Security in some ways. But I'm stuck on the state pension, which is 100% funded by me off my paycheck. And I do understand taxpayers pay my paycheck, but it's my money that goes to the pension fund. And obviously, the solvency of the pension fund is very important because we don't want more liabilities. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the kick of it is that, if you're not a municipal, city, or state employee, so with small exceptions, you as an individual contribute to Medicare, Medicaid. I do contribute to Medicare, and you should get your money back.
That's how it's always worked. Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of my attitude. You pay in, you should get out. And you trust.
That was the promise, right? Back with the New Deal.
Yeah, and then expansion under what was it called under President Johnson?
Oh, yeah. Yes. I can't remember the name of it either, but yes, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, definitely keep tabs on your federal delegation, particularly as they creep closer to Social Security age and Medicare age, and remind them that, you've been paying and you have a dedicated part of your paycheck to that. And, I understand that benefits can change based on Congress and, federal government's moving things around, um, but yeah, we got to make your voice heard and let them know that, don't touch my benefits.
Right. Exactly. We're at the end of the hour, believe it or not.
Time flies when you're having a lot of jibber jabber of tacky.
Oh, we're gonna change the name to the podcast, Jibber Jabber.
You guys have to be a certain age to understand what I'm saying sometimes.
I like Tacky Talk. I like the alliteration of Tacky Talk. It's better.
The tacky talk is much more roll off the tongue better.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Here's
yeah,
where I let folks know how to get a hold of you.
yeah, you guys see me in the office through the video, so I'm there. So I bounce back and forth between virtual meetings and real in-person stuff, and we're back in room 42, so we haven't moved since 2017. So you know how to find us, and my phone number seems to be consistent at 617-722-2370, 617-722-2370. We do have a question regarding suite control. I do not control my office suite. So again, the automated system with the front desk is overwhelmed with calls. You have to wait to get through the prompts to get to me because we are now moving offices. So I'm not clear who's going to control the suite yet. Obviously, my email works, tacky.chan@midhouse.gov, tackey.chan@midhouse.gov. We get a whole lot of emails now asking for co-sponsoring, but again, we prioritize constituent requests. People, as we talked about earlier, like unemployment fraud. We get that from people who need to get the unemployment benefits and be frauded. So we deal with a lot of that stuff. And then we have the legislature website, malegislature.gov, malegislature.gov. You can create your own account there and do your own bill monitoring, and you can see us in action as we get a little busier on the recordings and video. At Tacky Chan doesn't seem very popular anymore because people seem to want to get off X. We've noticed that people are leaving. You got to reevaluate if it actually is worth our time at some point. But we do have Facebook, which seems to be still okay. Yeah, State Representative for Tacky Chan Facebook, so you have that out there. And Tacky Chan org has a contact page and some useful phone numbers. And of course, we have time with Joe here on a weekly basis. And I forgot to talk about natural gas, which
we'll have to do that next week.
We'll talk about it next week. That is a moving target. They're not, the utilities are not eating the costs. I said it last week. That is not happening. They're deferring those costs. So you will eventually make the utility whole, but it would take some time at a later date. But we'll talk more about that. That continues to be an unfolding story at the State House regarding what really is going on. And given the fact that I've been front and center this back in my AG days, again, I think I understand what's happening now. But
okay, good. A little teaser for next week.
A little teaser for next week on your gas bills. I'm still putting my old hats on, trying to decipher what's going on. So, and then send Joe questions and comments, and Joe gets to pick because it is still his show, even though it's Tacky Talk. But we're always happy to hear from you. So I do get emails from constituents, but if you want to hear something that whether it be local or state or federal or international, email Joe.
Yeah, we'll do our best for sure.
Yeah, and he'll decide what's best.